Welcome everyone, bienvenue. Ani Boujou in Guinea. My name is Tina Semeniuk, and for those of you who don't know me, I am an associate professor at the University of Windsor. Also, here at Windsor, it's a beautiful day at Wawaetanong, which is also known as where the river bends. I am on the territories of the Three Fire Confederacy, which is the Ojibwa, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi, and I'm so fortunate to be here. It is a crisp, cool autumn day. The skies are bright and blue as the cover slide for Jessica Reid, and so it is fate today. I want to welcome you all to our series for this fall, where we're really highlighting our Fishcast trainee alum. Those have come through the program and out onto the other side, and they're going to be relaying their experiences for us. I do have some connection with Jess, as she's been such a staunch supporter of Fishcast in terms of being involved from the very beginning when we had our very first diversity workshop, when it was still CCFFR, the Canadian Conference for Fisheries Research. She was with us from the very beginning, and she's with us until the very end, I'm sure. Jessica's always been really a supporter in terms of contributing. She was on one of our SCAS panels in terms of where is the fisheries going today. She gave some really great insight. And Jessica's always held our feet to the fire in terms of saying what she expects, what she wants. And we really have always appreciated the feedback Jessica has given, always with a sense of love, always with a sense of just, making us better. And we've so appreciated Jessica, and we're so happy she was one of our Fishcast trainees. I'm going to stop there because Steve's going to have a lot more to say, and I don't want to take up the time. And so I'm just going to pass it over to Steve, if you don't mind, just to introduce Jessica to those who might not know her. I really appreciate it. So thanks to everybody for being here, and I can't wait to hear Jess's talk. Thank you all. Merci. Miigwech.
Thanks, Tina. Normally I like to do pretty lengthy introductions, but the problem here is that part of Jess's story is going to be her path. And so I don't want to give too much away here. So this is intentional. It's not me being lazy. What I want to point out is, and maybe I'll use this to sort of tell the story, or what I think of Jessica, and that's the fact that had a long-serving lab manager whose name was also Jessica, and Jessica, the other Jessica, left us, and that left a gaping hole in our lab in terms of somebody that helped create a sense of community, that helped support students behind the scenes with getting reimbursed, event organization, and so on. But also somebody that I could lean on every once in a while. As professors, there's challenges that we need to overcome and address, and so we need people that are trusted colleagues that we can lean on. And Jessica Reid ended up taking on that role of lab manager part-time, as she also worked on her master's degree and as a Fishcast trainee. And I can't overstate the importance of her contributions to our lab. I know extremely valued by not only the students, but by me, a very trusted colleague and friend. And so that's all I want to say by way of introduction. I'm really excited for all of you to learn more about the journey that Jess has been on and continues to be on as she joins us today from the Rock. So with that, Jess, thank you and welcome.
Hi, everyone. Really thankful to be here today. Thanks so much for the introduction from Tina and Steve. As people have alluded to, I'm speaking today from the city of St. John's in Tehumcook, which is also known as Newfoundland. And I'm really new to these lands, actually. I've spent the last 8 years in Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, so I have a lot to learn about these new diverse histories and cultures, but I'm looking forward to that as part of my personal journey. And personal journeys are really the theme of what brings us here today. Today, I'm hoping to inspire others to consider equally valid career paths outside of academia if you're in a place where it's just not working for you anymore. And you might be thinking to yourself, this is a really nice collage, but like, why is there a baby photo of you on the screen? And I just really wanted to paint the full picture today of how I got here and how my mindset has changed over time. Because in case no one has told you, that is a perfectly normal and valid thing to do at any point in your life. As scientists, we're trained on how to observe and record new information and then develop our ideas and rethink original hypotheses based on this new information. So I find it ironic a lot of the times that we don't extend that same grace to ourselves. Today, I'm going to be centering a lot on this question of what do I want to be? And I hope that you can reflect alongside me. So yes, I'm taking you all the way back to baby Jess. For a kid growing up in Toronto who was lucky enough to have a backyard and parents who were sporty but not outdoorsy, working with wildlife seemed like an impossible feat. I was really fortunate to have parents who supported my interests, but other than some snails and some caterpillars in the backyard, all my connection to like nature and wildlife was through media. I had no idea how to do the things that I was watching or reading about, but I really wanted to figure out how. But at that time, saying that I liked animals only ever really got me to, you should be a vet. And that sounded fine to me, so that's what I wanted to be all the way until I was like 16. I told everyone who ever asked that I was going to the University of Guelph and I was going to become a vet or study zoology or do something like that, all the way until I was in grade 11. And then I did a campus tour and I didn't like it. And that's absolutely no offense to Guelph University. My best friend actually went up going there, and it is great, but it wasn't great for me. Something just felt off. And so I think without fully knowing it, that was the first time that I placed personal life as just of equal importance in a decision-making process. And so the point I want to drive home here is that a thesis, a research project, a job, it can all be great on paper, but you have to live a whole life around that too and be safe and happy and comfortable. And so if anything ever feels weird or wrong about a decision, my little nugget of wisdom, I guess, is that it's worth being cautious and taking the time to think these decisions through. So just before I had planned to head off to university, and 16-year-old me had my like whole life mapped out for myself, apparently, but like reality set in and I was faced with this question, what do I want to be if I don't want to be a vet anymore? Deciding to pursue a degree in wildlife biology, ecology, environmental science, or a related field can be really daunting because the path is not linear. And life is obviously not as simple as I've made it out to be on this little graphic here, but for comparison's sake, that's how it can feel in this field. Some pathways seem much more straightforward with what you want to study at a post-secondary institution and then the jobs that are waiting for you after you graduate. If you want to be a lawyer, you can go to law school. If you want to be a doctor, you pursue some sort of medical school. If you want to be an accountant, you can do an accounting degree, and there's a whole specific accounting test you have to pass. But if you study ecology, I don't know, you just do science. Like it's so vague. When you're that young, you don't really know what that means. But a biology major with a concentration in ecology and evolution is what I pursued anyways, because that's what I was passionate about, and I had the privilege of doing so. I really, really loved my undergrad experience, and I couldn't believe that I could major in this topic and take classes that were called freshwater invertebrates or ornithology. I had friends in a lot of other degrees, and they didn't understand why I couldn't go out that night. And I was like, oh, I have a midterm on frog calls tomorrow. That's just living the dream. But I was really happy and I couldn't wait to do more. I was obsessed with getting into field work, and I always bragged that I would never work an office job a day in my life. So I completed my undergrad thesis with Dr. Stephen Cook, my introduction into the Cook Lab, and I studied freshwater fish and mussel distributions at Canuck Institute in Quebec. The project partnered with the Canadian Museum of Nature, and together we found that brook trout in the system were the most likely host for the eastern pearl shell larvae, based on habitat overlap. The only areas of the river where we found brook trout, were also the only areas of the river where we found healthy, reproducing densities of mussels. So it was a pretty incredible experience, and it really fueled my passion for this field even more. I was really living the dream. The next summer, I got to come back as a field tech and work on more fisheries-based projects and even lead my own mini study on recreational angling. When I finished my undergrad degree, I knew I wanted to do a master's because I still loved field work and being outdoors, and I saw that as the obvious pathway to keep doing that. And I really still love figuring out how animals interact with their environment and all the new things related to that. But if we're being honest, I also felt a bit of peer pressure from the field and society. I think my friends and I all agreed at the time that a master's was kind of the new undergrad. And that's a really exclusive and harmful mindset, and it's not really true. Grad school is not cheap or easy, and it's unfortunately across many fields becoming increasingly common to apply to grad school because students simply don't know what else to do after graduating or they can't find a job and not for the love of learning. I didn't really know any of that at the time, past me, and I did genuinely love research. So I applied to NSERC with the hopes of funding an Arctic-based research project on fisheries and indicators of environmental contamination. But as the story goes in academia, I didn't get the funding, and my prospective supervisor didn't have the funding to host me without it. So again, it was one of those life moments where you sit back, you're like, okay, let's not rush into anything. Let's think about the next play and how else I could get research experience in this time off. And that's where I spent 8 months after my undergrad working full time for the Canadian Centre for Evidence-Based Conservation as an environmental evidence data technician. These are fun words to say back to back. This was a really cool opportunity that helped me better understand what went into forming and publishing a research article, how to structure articles to make information as clear as possible, and it gave me a small step into the doorway of topics that had nothing to do with my thesis, like the increased use of antimicrobials during COVID and how that could impact freshwater systems, conservation measures to address wildlife crime across the globe, and other papers that you can see here. I really valued the data management skills, writing, and project management skills that I developed there, and they ended up being incredibly useful when I finally did do my master's. So, what do I want to be? I really committed to the research pathway. I ended up moving up the NSERC waitlist and getting that scholarship at Carleton University. So, I came back to the Cook Lab and studied the movement of freshwater fishes in urban habitats. This part probably sounds really familiar to a lot of you. My master's was a whirlwind of fieldwork and balancing all the other things that grad students do. TA-ships, grant writing, lab meetings, committee meetings, writing proposals, and various drafts of your thesis chapters. It's quite the step up from being part of a research team in a more junior role as potentially a field tech to leading the research yourself. So even though my field work was really difficult, both physically and mentally, I'm really proud of myself for what I achieved, and I think I worked hard to ensure that the data was informative for natural resource managers in the Ottawa area. In one chapter, I assessed the degree of connectivity between a river and an old stormwater management pond that had been rehabilitated for wildlife habitat but was never monitored. It was really amazing to work with and track over 18 different species of fish and confirm that fish were able to move back and forth between these habitats. In my other chapter, I focused in on just one species, muskellunge or muskie, and I tracked their movements in a river across seasons to better understand their distribution and high use areas in the river. I found that the muskie in the system were actually quite resident to particular reaches of the river without much overlap, indicating that future restoration and conservation work really needed to consider on where muskie were actually spending most of their time. Oh, apparently a video plays. And of course, as part of that degree, I was part of FishCast, which is what brings me here today. I started my master's in 2021, so FishCast was very much in its early days and trying to figure out how to deliver a program during a global pandemic. So kudos to everyone. The internship aspect of FishCast was great, as I was able to do my internship with an existing project collaborator, Jennifer Lamoureux at the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, and take that applied aspect to my project one step further. I had the opportunity to shadow site visits and attend city restoration planning meetings and be part of those discussions in which folks from all different backgrounds of ecology, engineering, and architecture would come together and try to compromise on ways to find to mesh urban infrastructure with the natural environment. It was really informative and a good real-world learning experience to the realities of how management works outside of your class. But honestly, the standout of my whole Fishcast experience was the people and the network that it gives you. I was fortunate to have the opportunity to attend some conferences during grad school, and it was really comforting to know that I would recognize a few people and faces, maybe have someone to sit with at lunch, and have a dedicated student or early career event that I could go to while I was still gaining the confidence to actually talk to professors and other people. It was a great little network of students, and it's kind of wholesome now because at least that first cohort, most of us have like grown up now and like graduated and moved on to new institutions or careers. So that network still serves me really well today, and I always look forward to crossing paths with folks. But towards the end of my degree, this is where the real talks happen. I was really struggling, and I felt bad for struggling because I had wanted this for so long. And as I keep saying, I was living the dream, and research and fish and river systems, they're so cool. So why am I so miserable? I felt like I didn't even have a good excuse to feel how I was feeling. I had friends, I had a supportive family, I had a good relationship with my supervisor. I was giving talks at conferences and winning small grants. I even had some publications already from all the side projects I had been doing. So if you're succeeding on paper, but you still feel exhausted and sad on the inside, then I don't know if we're measuring success correctly. So what do I want to be? I asked myself this so many times during my degree, and it was really scary to finally admit that the answer was that I had changed. And at this new point in my life, with new experiences and information and different perspectives, that I don't think that academia was for me anymore. I really filled my plate. I at one point worked 2 jobs, as Steve alluded to, with the lab manager. Um, I maximized opportunities and experiences, which was so great for my CV. And it's really hard to regret how much I chose to do during grad school because it gave me skills and experiences that helped me get to where I am today. But it was at a really high cost. The system is really overwhelming, and students are a really vulnerable group of people to be the backbone of that system. If you don't like reading or writing, then yeah, grad school might not be for you because those are pretty key components. But if you have a poor grad school experience because of lack of support, mentorship, resources, or straight up discrimination, then that is an institutional failure and does not reflect your capability, talent, or worth. Just gonna let that sit for a minute. But my point today isn't that we should all like throw our laptops into the wind and everyone should like quit grad school. A lot of people are having a wonderful time and loving it. And I'm personally really happy for you, and your research and impact really matters, especially really like exciting projects that are joined with community or trying to affect policy changes. But there is also peer-reviewed published research coming out that a vast majority of Canadian graduate students are struggling, and that there are failures at multiple institutional levels impacting the overall experience that people are having at grad school. So I'd just like to appeal to that group of people that it's okay. And even if it's sad and scary that you don't love this thing that you've always wanted to do anymore, or a path you chose did not pan out and really meet your expectations, you are going to be okay. I was really worried about leaving academia because I was having these horrible intrusive thoughts that if I didn't stay in that specific field, it meant I would have gotten my degrees for nothing, which is crazy, by the way. Or that whatever I moved on to next meant I wouldn't be a real scientist anymore, which is also crazy. But it's hard to drown out those voices and worries when sometimes you have popular media whispering the same things right back in your ear, like this recent news article from Nature that says nearly 50% of researchers quit science within a decade. The headline really should have been this, in my opinion, because not being a student or a postdoc or working at an academic institution does absolutely not mean that you have abandoned science. Fishcast is actually a really great example of showing people that you can do science across sectors in academia, industry, government, NGOs, in community. Science is everywhere, and science can look like so many things. So I'm going to spend the rest of my time here today showing you that. Right after finishing my master's, I landed a research job at a not-for-profit organization called Wildlife Conservation Society Canada, or WCS Canada, and I worked in the Key Biodiversity Areas Department, or KBAs. There's a lot of acronyms in the workforce. But KBAs are sites that contribute to the persistence of biodiversity, nationally and globally. You can find them across land, freshwater, and marine environments, and they are recognized to support rare and threatened species and ecosystems, as well as key natural processes. They're designated based on specific measurable scientific criteria like COSEWIC and IUCN rankings. I've put a map in here of all the KBAs that have been completed across Canada, which are like the green polygons, but they're a bit drowned out by all the in-progress orange dot sites, but that's really exciting. And at the end, I think I'll link a couple things if you want to have a look around and haven't heard about this initiative. But my role was a really interesting blend of data management and communications. For me personally, it was a really welcome shift from the chaos and unpredictability of fieldwork. I got to help write annual reports, organize webinars, and even planned our staff retreat that you can see we're on Lake Louise there at the bottom. I also did a lot of data management, data checking, and copy editing for over 100 KBAs on the website at the time. I'm sure there's lots more now. I was really able to carve out this role in quality control for myself. My copy editing suggestions and processes are still being implemented today. I also had a lot of more technical tasks in my portfolio, like helping to manage and run R codes that process site data through various stages of review. I digitized hundreds of species COSEWIC information and distribution maps into ArcGIS. And I also uploaded finalized sites into our iNaturalist project so that communities could connect with the places in real time. I also worked with amazing and brilliant people, from expert, inspiring communicators to my genius manager who could code like no other and was so cool. The folks I worked with were also incredible naturalists, and it was a really supportive, positive environment. At the company level, wellness and work-life balance were taken extremely seriously, and the benefits and workplace policies very much reflected that. I needed to regain a lot of confidence in myself after grad school, and I really thrived in this caring environment where people were passionate about their work, but also had balanced lives. It was also incredibly inspiring to work for a female majority organization where at almost every department, head, director, and even the CEO were all women, which is not something you come across a lot in academia. Sometimes I would get really deep into a smaller task, and it was kind of easy to lose sight of the bigger project goals. And maybe some people already here do too, had that insecurity that maybe you've stepped away a little too much from science and research. But it wasn't true, and I worked really hard to stop those voices in my head because, as I said before, science can really take on any form. And if everyone was doing the hands-on research, we wouldn't have anyone actually using or mobilizing the knowledge that gets generated. KBAs rely on up-to-date population and survey estimates from a wide variety of sources. So of course that hands-on research is really critical, but the work to synthesize the knowledge and then work with Indigenous communities, governments at all levels, and other NGOs to recognize the places is just as meaningful. KBAs are actually a really big deal, and they're like another tool in the Canadian conservation tool belt. They really help inform protected areas and Indigenous protected and conserved areas that all contribute to achieving Canada's goal of 30% of land and oceans protected by 2030. So yeah, sometimes I was just copy editing data from a site, but I was also helping achieve federal conservation goals in a way. But in August of this year, I moved on from WCS Canada and joined another not-for-profit, Canadian Science Publishing, or CSP. CSP publishes 22 different scientific journals, many of which may be familiar to you, such as the Canadian Journal of Zoology or Facets. My job title is a journal development specialist, and I have two journals in my portfolio. You can see here the Canadian Journal of Fisheries and Aquatic Sciences, which most of you are probably more familiar with, as well as environmental reviews. And I've only been here for about 3 months now, but it's a really exciting and dynamic role that brings me back a lot closer to the core research community, but in a new way. It's great to work with authors and help promote their research without feeling the pressure of being the researcher myself and finishing writing and analysis in really specific timeframes. The role involves responsibilities that take place before and after peer review. So far, I've worked on setting up special issues and collections for these journals, analyzing trends and future directions for environmental science in general, scoping for new journal ideas, and looking at submission rate, acceptance rate, and other data related to journal health and development. There's a lot of collaboration in this role as well, and so you get to work with the peer review team and the marketing and communications team, especially when it comes to the promotional side of the job, where you're attending conferences or selecting editor's choice articles. The job is really different every day, and it's hard to be bored, and creativity can really shine here. There's new ideas and ways of doing things that pop up all the time. And again, at this company, I've experienced a commitment to employee wellness, benefits, time off, and supportive and enthusiastic coworkers. And I'd like to think that the people I work with all recognize that publishing is not the be all end all, and there are many other valuable ways to share scientific knowledge outside of peer review journals. But I will like to say that I think it's great that CSP is actually run by real humans still and not an AI phishing bot that kind of flood the publishing system with bad actors. So now that time has passed from grad school, I've gained more job experience and I've just gotten a little older. It's not so scary to admit that I want different things in my life than when I was a teenager. Nothing will ever take away my love and passion for animals and nature and wildlife. But as I hope I've demonstrated today, there are lots of ways to participate and meaningfully contribute to science while maintaining a certain kind of lifestyle. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. If I ever get the itch for field work or to put on some waders, I can go do hobbies and hike and camp and explore with my partner and my dog, and it doesn't have to be labor. I have way more time to do things that I enjoy. I don't think I got a chance to read a single novel in grad school, apart from maybe like one or two over Christmas break. And that whole time, it's like the break you're trying to enjoy, but you never actually shut your brain off from all the things you should be doing instead. So over time, I've learned that I'm not a bad researcher. I wasn't bad at grad school. I just best functioned. The way I best function and who I am is just not conducive to the design of the current system in Canada. So, what do I want to be? I know now that it's not about a specific job title or career path. I didn't go into ecology to be a journal development specialist, but I want to be happy. I want to have time for the outdoors. I want to be well rested. I want to be financially stable. I want to be all of these things and more. And I actually really invite people to use the chat right now to maybe shout out ways that they try to find work-life balance. And I'd really like to put the pressure on the mentors and leaders and PIs that might be attending to kind of get the ball rolling because it's really, really hard for students to speak up if they don't see their leaders doing the same or, showing that it's okay to have a work-life balance. So I'll just take a few minutes here, read out some answers. Native plant gardening. That sounds lovely. Running. That's good. I'm not good at running, but I think it is a great activity for those who enjoy it. Woodworking, book time. I love book time. Yoga, reading. Yeah, I think one of the hardest things as a student was being so tired because you spend so much time reading that I couldn't even enjoy reading like the fiction and like fun stuff. Your brain was just so tired. Birding, spending time with my dog. Work-life balance by having email notifications shut off after work hours. That is amazing. And I'm really proud of you for doing that, Brooklyn. Like looking you in the virtual eye right now. I'm very proud of you. Just let a couple more come in then. Friday night pizza dinners with good friends. That sounds very yummy. Okay, I don't want to take up too much time from the question period. I'd like to leave you all with a bit of a call to action, if you will, to leave something better than when you found it, which I know is cheesy and cliche, but this is often hidden labor that can be very rewarding. Support Our Science was the driving force and loudest voice behind increasing tri-agency grants like NSERC for the first time in over 15 years. And we have one of the board members in the chat with us right now, Andrea, if anyone would like to connect about Support Our Science. And I personally encourage you to look for small ways you can get involved with improving graduate and postdoc funding, whether it's participating in their social media campaigns or signing petitions. There are also lots of ways to step up in subcommittees related to EDI or improving student experiences that try and make science a more inclusive and accessible place for all. When I worked at WCS Canada, I was on the internal EDI committee and helped improve our maternity leave policy and helped suggest trainings and workshop to people looking to start or continue that EDI journey. I also still serve on the SCAS EDI committee, and we're always looking for ways to improve best practices and guidelines at conferences and any society-related initiatives. The caveat here is that, of course, these kinds of service are in addition to everything that you must do as a graduate student or as a postdoc, and so you might already be overwhelmed. But I think it's good to take the time and learn about what some of these commitments are like. Maybe it's just signing a petition every 6 months instead of like after-hour nightly service work. So if that sounds feasible to you, please do it. It's really rewarding. And overall, better people leads to better science. I am going to leave it there because I'm sure I didn't touch on a bunch of things, and I'm really looking forward to the discussions and questions that come from this. Thank you, everyone, for hosting me on kind of like a scary and vulnerable topic about like mental health and my experiences. So I'm just grateful for this kind of platform and to use my privilege to speak about this. So thanks.
Thank you, Jessica. Steve, I can leave it up to you if you wanted to moderate the